They don't pre-record. And
they just go.
Yeah, it's all live.
Yeah.
So they have it all at a mixer and everything, so they can hear themselves and make sure that the mic doesn't check off and all that kind of stuff.
So when you say hear themselves, like it's like so I could hear you through my mic, or like I could hear myself.
I could hear the whole conversation. Yeah, it's just it's like your entire mic. Like when you do it in the mixer, all the mics go in and then there's a line. Then there's lines out. So then those lines out go to headphones, and then you can hear what's going through. Like only the things going through the mixer is what's going to be going out.
Sure.
So they have a live feed. They have one guy who does like, hey, can you pull this up for us? And then he's like their intern, and, and then he'll pull up something on the screen, and it's all live, so he doesn't have to do any post processing.
It's kind of nice.
Yeah. You need a lot of money to do that though. It's like he has like I think a 4 camera setup or four or 5 camera setup, and then on each one he has to have it connected to some sort of live broadcasting thing. So you have to have a camera plus the hardware that makes it live, and then it has to go into a.
But how does he determine which camera angle to show?
Oh, so on the
like
computer, his intern has to press like 1, 2, and it switches.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have to have. It's a very expensive setup. Like you have to have all the cameras, and then you have to have a dedicated computer that's bringing the feeds in, and then outputting it to the internet. So, it's not cheap. So, but I have to sync the audio. So let me just clap.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that should be good. Okay. All right. Ready for episode 2?
Ready when you are, my friend.
All right. So today we have Ron Rivers, who is the CEO of Love to Brew, and the founder and CEO of our society as well, right?
Technically, it's like executive director. I just call myself the founder.
Yeah. Okay. And then you're also a BJJ black belt with a pretty extensive background, trained, with some pretty influential people. And also you're a recently happily married guy. Right?
Yeah.
Yep. About to join you soon. So thank you so much for coming. This is episode 2, and it's been a long time coming. I think we've been talking about this for over a year, a couple months to close to a year now. I've been going through a lot of things in life trying to get this stuff, ready, but now that we're on, ready to go, just pushing it, right?
Yeah, I mean, better late than never, right?
Exactly.
There's no, it's not a race.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much again. I definitely really appreciate you coming in. I think Ron is somebody that's helped me personally a lot in my own personal life. We've had breakfast 6 a.m. at the Omega Diner, and I was going through some really tough times, and Ron was one of the people that I kind of looked up to, just looking at his life and kind of seeing that, we're quite similar in age, right? What are you, 30?
I just turned 34.
Oh, you just turned 34.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to turn 33 next year soon, so I'm a little behind you, but I just looked up to you. You were doing a lot in your life, and just for whatever reason, you were just never stopping. I just thought that was incredible, and it was something that I wanted to mimic. So I really appreciate the time you gave me, for breakfast, and to just share your wisdom with me and kind of help me to, basically go on to where I wanted to get. But man. So tonight, I wanted to first talk about your martial arts experience.
Sure.
To think that you're doing all these things, but you're still training, you're still doing your BJJ, you're a black belt, you come in open mats in the mornings, you're still training and still going. Explain your background, explain where you've come from, when you started, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So first, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Super appreciate the kind words. It's very, very touching. So my martial arts background starts, technically with wrestling. I was an overweight kid in middle school.
I didn't guess that.
Very antisocial. I was really into like magic cards, and then puberty hit, and then you go through these weird range of emotions where you're like, do I ever want to talk to a girl in my life? If so, maybe I need to lose some weight. Maybe I need to do some things. I weigh the same amount, if not a little less now at 34 that I weighed in 8th grade.
It's crazy. I never knew that about you, but that was the same exact story as me.
I was about once. I think I wrestled. I think I showed up to the first day of wrestling practice around 178.
Wow.
Being whatever I was, 5'4", and an orb. And it was, so that was it. And my wrestling career was both incredible and lackluster. So I was never good. I ended my high school career with I think a below 500 record. Not too far below, but I think wrestling for me I was a technical wrestler, but I was just in terms of growth, I wasn't very strong. I was coming from like this fat kid body. I didn't really know how to work out. I definitely didn't know how to like eat and diet and exercise correctly. So that was always, I was like, I'd be up like 8 pounds one day, and I'd have a match and I have to lose 8 pounds that day, and the next day I'd be up the 8 pounds. But wrestling, I think, was a really fundamental part of my development as a person, which then translates to jiu-jitsu. Wrestling taught me just the value of persistence, and just despite not winning that often, and I think I was technical, but I also don't think I had the mindset for it. I didn't really get the competitive ferociousness, for lack of a better term, when you compete until jiu-jitsu. Wrestling, I was afraid. I was definitely afraid to step on the mat almost every time, just win or lose.
Wow.
And I would do well. Wrestling was funny because I would do well, when it didn't matter. I'd go to summer tournaments, like I'd go to summer wrestling camps and be like 14-0. But then I'd wrestle some guy, one of the guys I knew from a club in like the counties, and I'd lose first round, right? And it's like, when the pressure was on, I just wasn't really good at it. But yeah, so that's how I started with wrestling. And then when I went to college, and I also started doing Muay Thai in high school. Like at the end of wrestling, I started doing briefly Muay Thai. Went to college, and for the first year, I kind of just wrestled on and off. And then my second year, my sophomore year, I started jiu-jitsu. And I remember, I'll never forget, I trained under Matt Serra, the Serra Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy, which is still in New York and Long Island. They have 2 academies, and the first one they called East Meadow. It was kind of like this like dungeon. It was a real, I loved East Meadow. But I remember standing outside the building, and right next to the building was a kung fu school.
Wow.
And I remember looking at both, being like, man, kung fu would be awesome. Like knowing how to do like the crane style, not knowing the depth of like actual like the value of MMA and the value of martial arts. I ended up choosing to go jiu-jitsu because I was, I just thought that my wrestling background would be beneficial in that way. And it was actually my second time in the school. The first time I went, I just didn't feel comfortable with the process. And the second time I did. And that's how it started, I trained for until I got my blue belt, I was training like 2 days a week, 2 or 3 days, because I was like poor. That's what I could afford in college. But then after I got my blue belt, I started training like 5-6 days a week. And I continued that for like 7 years until I got my black belt.
Wow. So how long?
Not even. It took me I got my black belt like right after my 7th year anniversary, I think.
Wow.
So
that's incredible.
Yeah, I was very into it. It was a big part of my life. Talking about wrestling, how I learned persistence and just not giving up, just learning that you can. Wrestling really at my stage of my life taught me that you can succeed at something. You can do this. You can push yourself. Jiu-jitsu really taught me mastery, and really just like knowing what it is to focus and honing your focus, because that's something that I've transferred to my business and professional and just relationships. But that's really what I gained from jiu-jitsu, was understanding what it takes to really master something, an art, or whatever it might be. And the secret is just showing up, right? It's just showing up. That's the crazy secret. Yeah, just show up. And so that's that. What else did you? I'm sorry, I'm getting a little off track. We're talking about like just the jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So I was really competitive for a long time. But same thing, you know, I remember like after the Pan Ams I had lost, and I remember talking to Matt after, and you know, I just think I was just telling him like, you know, I just don't know that competition is for me anymore, because like I just couldn't get over the mental barriers of that like high level, high pressure competition. I was in the best shape of my life. I really felt like I could have won that tournament like pretty handedly, like watching the other guys wrestle after I had lost. If it was in like a casual environment, you know, I think I would have done really well, but you know, that's not competition, you know, and that's it. Like competition is not a casual environment, and there is a huge mental aspect. And that was kind of where I like knew, okay, like I'm going to continue to enjoy jiu-jitsu. It's going to be a part of my life, probably for the rest of my life until I can physically do it. Yeah. But I'm not going to seek competition anymore. It changed the paradigm. Like I wasn't trying to prove myself through competition. And then I ended up moving back, and then I moved back to New Jersey to open a business, and then I went back to Long Island a couple months later, and that's when I got promoted at like a seminar. Oh, wow. And that was about, I mean, I guess 7 years ago. I've been a black belt for about 7 years now.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's incredible, but I appreciate that. But it's, you know, I've just been doing it a long time. Yeah. You know, I've been, between wrestling and jiu-jitsu now, it's been about over 20 years on the mat, nonstop. Like I haven't taken a week off in 20 years. Maybe that's a lie. Maybe maybe I got injured. I'm sure I got injured at some point, but I never like was like, I'm going to stop doing this. Yeah. You know, like
you show up. No
matter. Even when I was injured, I'd show up and drill. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So what year would you say you got your black belt? It's probably the year
2011. Okay. No, I know that because it's when I opened Love to Brew.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was the same year. It was like right as we opened. It was like I think I got right after we opened.
Wow. So I literally started training a year before you opened Love to Brew. Then.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah,
huh?
I started in 2010.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I think I took that same mentality where, like, I was a fat kid as well. I didn't really do well. I tried wrestling. I quit my first year because of there was some weird hazing stuff. Yeah. I didn't want to be a part of.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to Franklin
okay.
High School. So, I mean, you're from North Brunswick, right? So, I'm pretty sure you know our antics out there. So, yeah, I was told I had some skill and I had this fire inside, and I definitely felt that. I always felt that, like, this drive to want to be great at something that revolved around fighting. You know, it's just, you grow up in an Asian family and they're like, that's a waste of time. Go become a doctor, right? Yeah. So I never really got to pursue that. I bought like me and my brother would just beat the mess out of each other without our parents knowing. We would buy boxing gloves, and then we would just practice moves on each other, just beating the mess out of each other. He's actually a pretty good boxer, but I actually made fun of jiu-jitsu. I thought it was stupid. Yeah. I was like, just like you, like, oh, if I could just learn kung fu and just one-handed punch, and knock a guy out, then what do I need to go on the ground for, But that's when my buddy was like, I'm actually going to have him on the show as well. He's the one that introduced me to jiu-jitsu.
David?
Yeah, David, yeah. So, he was like, oh, man, if you think you could just beat a jiu-jitsu guy, then you should just do a tournament. So I went into a tournament with no training.
Did you?
It was Beast of the East, Grappler's Quest. And he just showed me the rule system, and then he trained me for 2 weeks. The moves, like okay, well, this is how you get points. So I actually went up against this guy, and everybody was telling me like, oh, he definitely was a sandbagger. Guy was like a wrestler. He was trying to take me down and stuff. But I did pretty well. I actually lost by points. I didn't get demolished or whatever. But after that feeling, I was like, this is what I need to be doing for the rest of my life. Yeah. And then at that time, Dave, Brian was my coach, the owner of Advanced. Was training out of Blues, which is Dave's instructor. So he was like, oh yeah, Brian has an MMA fighter in the UFC. He does all this stuff, and he's right down the road from me. So
dude, I feel like I've known you longer than that. That's crazy.
Yeah, right? Isn't it crazy?
That is.
No, I've known you for about since 2011, 7 years. Yeah.
It's funny because I can relate to like, you used to get called like gay for wrestling, right? Like, first off, like that's even an insult. That's ridiculous. But second off, like it's
not that there's anything wrong with
no, but that's my point. It's
Yeah.
it's not an insult. It's silly, but high school and high school.
Yeah.
It's also, by the way, high school 20 years ago, not high school today. Like
Exactly,
consciousness has evolved, but one thing I always loved about wrestling, even in like middle school, and what I still love about jiu-jitsu, it's the only sports, in martial arts are the only sports where it's only you and the guy, right? If you win, you win, and if you lose, you lose. There's no one else to blame. It's not that your quarterback threw a bad pass, right? It's not that your teammate missed the layup, right? It's like it's all on you, and that's a lot of burden to bear. And I've always loved that aspect of it. And certainly wrestling is not looked upon as the you mentioned your Asian heritage and just the strictness, but it's something that I would totally, if nothing else, I swear the best part about wrestling jiu-jitsu is losing. Like it's just the best part because it's just the most humiliating, humbling experience. And then you just get up and do it again, and it just breaks your ego to a point where you go to, anything else in life, you're like, this is not that big of a deal, like it's not.
Absolutely.
And I kind of want to I don't want to sidetrack your interview too much, but
absolutely.
Being a fat kid, right? So has that given you, have you had the, introspection on your, like the way you are and the way you think? Have you ever thought about how that's impacted you as an adult?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, right?
Oh my gosh. It's like, you have all these flashbacks, moments, a lot of your confidence as a man, which, I definitely can get into, it hinges a lot on your childhood.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Like being a fat kid. I mean, there's so many girls that I liked, in middle school and whatever. And it's just like,
that you were invisible to.
Yeah,
invisible.
Yeah, invisible.
Yeah.
There's no way you could, so, it is what it is. But, there's like a sting there, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I never ever want to go back to there. And that was like a drive to really push, it's like you when you're like a fat kid and just like, the world kind of like looks down on you.
Yeah.
There's a ton of anger just grows inside.
That's so funny, man.
And unfortunately some kids, they take it out on the wrong way, which is, they turn to, very insane levels of violence, or even, self-harm. But for me, like I grew up watching martial art stuff. My favorite movie of all time is Bloodsport. Yeah. That's actually what got me into the whole martial arts stuff. Is like, man, I want to fight. I just want to fight, man. I want to be like Jean-Claude Van Damme and just go to this kumite and just fight everybody, But I couldn't do that. I was this fat kid that had to focus on studying, and you build this animosity towards people, that put you down your whole life. And I actually grew up getting into a lot of fights. Like I got into a lot of fights in school. Yeah. On the bus, like I was always looking for a fight, but as you kind of, get more mature and grow up and realize, okay, I can get into a lot of trouble doing this type of stupid stuff. I remember I got into a fight in middle school, and I went to this school called Hillcrest, and this kid just bumped into me, and I just started swinging off on him. And then the guidance counselor pulled me aside afterwards because we got caught, and she was like, I'm gonna call your parents and let them know what you did today. And I just started crying because I knew I was gonna get beat. Like I knew as soon as I got home, I was gonna get the crap beat out of me. So I was like, I need to never do this again. But that fire was always there, And as you're getting older, like this flame just constantly grows. And unfortunately, many years I was like depressed and sad, and I didn't really have an outlet. I could have. Well, I mean, during another period of my time, I went that dark route. But just in high school into college, I was very introverted, didn't care, and thought a lot about self-harm stuff. But, in college, I found my faith, and, that changed a lot of the playing field for me in that
Religion
sense.
did for you.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, but it wasn't enough to get that inner animal out. There was still.
Were you still heavy in college or no?
I was still pretty heavy. Yeah. I was about $190 to close to 200 pounds.
Okay, that's not like the worst, but I
no,
understand.
it wasn't terrible, but
you're out of shape.
I could probably like lick my nipple. I can't do that anymore. But it was pretty bad.
That's interesting. I hit because I started wrestling when I was like in 13. So
Yeah.
like puberty and wrestling, the combo of that gave me, I shot up and I kind of got skinny, but I totally understand where you're coming from. For me, it was like, it led to a lot of like socially awkward situations. And I never was in the self-harm camp. And I was always pretty, even when I was heavy, I was like, I felt like an air of charisma. Like I like to talk to people. I wasn't afraid to do that. But there's things like, so it for a period, it gave me a very, I think almost like a warped, view of relationships in a way. I don't think I had the right priorities for a long time, because I think I felt so denied that once I had the ability to, have affection, that I kind of used it in a way that, probably wasn't that mentally the healthiest way for myself. Nothing abusive, nothing nothing harmful to anyone else. But just something that I look back on and say, okay, I know why I did those things, and I know why I, felt the way I did in retrospect, but certainly not what I would consider like a healthy view on relationships. And now even, this is transitioning, but my wife also, when she was younger, was a little heavier. So it's funny because we both have food, and she works out all the time, and we both have like this weird, like, we call it the fat kid syndrome. Like, we'll, man, there's some Saturdays where we'll consume like 9,000 calories. Like it's just like
it's cheat days, man. You gotta have them.
Yeah. But that's it.
You gotta have them.
But that's exactly it. And I think that what we've developed that's really worked for us is just a strong sense of discipline. Like we have our day. Like Saturday's usually our cheat day. It's
same here.
It's very consistent.
Same here, Saturday.
Because that way Sunday you can reset, and then like you're on your week and you're good. And we'll cook on Sunday for the whole week.
Yeah.
We're both vegetarians, so that works out for us. But yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy. Like when you are introspective and you meditate on these thoughts and you reflect on your life, it is crazy how when you're in a place in your life where you can't really comprehend and you can't really work through the thoughts, how you kind of compensate, with your actions. And you said anger. I was also very angry as a kid. It's really funny how, being two parallel different worlds. I mean, and just having the same exact experiences, right?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah,
that's interesting.
Totally different lifestyles, But it is very interesting. I mean, even though, when you touched upon the relationships part, I mean, I did have a lot of relationships also back in that time. Even though I was a little bit heavier, I mean, I still had swagger. It wasn't like I had breakdance and stuff. Like I was a fat kid, I was breakdancing.
Nice,
but I still had, but the way I looked at relationships was very unhealthy.
Yeah,
it's like this was my world, and I had to be, if I didn't make this girl happy or whatever, I was meaningless, or I was worthless, stuff like that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Like my, if she left me, then I'm even worse than than who I was before her.
Oh, wow.
Okay. It was very like this weird.
Yeah, I get it.
It's like, oh well, she likes me even though I'm overweight and this. Yeah. Then either I'm super lucky or she's stupid. But no. Back in that time, you're young. You really don't know anything about relationships, and
we all learn the hard way, right?
You gotta learn. Yeah. That's the unfortunately, that tends to be the best way because it really sticks. Yeah. But the way they say, what's that saying? It's like a fool learns from their own mistakes, but a wise person learns from the mistakes of others. So
never heard that.
That's what I'm trying to do now. Learn from other people. So, but so your advice in terms of the martial arts. For other guys that are pursuing after their black belts and things like that, and I know you've trained with you mentioned Chris Weidman, who used to be UFC champ. You've trained with some big guys that were a part of that Danaher Death Squad, leg lock guys, and all this stuff.
So, I mean, Weidman specifically, I mean, I wasn't like his main training partner. Weidman came in like right as I was leaving, like that kind of transition period. So, I mean, I had rolled with him. Yeah. Weidman, so a story about Chris Weidman, and he probably doesn't even remember this, but I remember Weidman coming in, and he was like brand new, and the first time we rolled, I mean, he had never done jiu-jitsu, and I think I got him like in a guillotine, right? And Weidman's significantly larger than I am. I'd say within like 2 to 3 months of training, I couldn't tap out. I was a brown belt at the time. He had never done jiu-jitsu. So he was there for 2 to 3 months and I couldn't tap him out.
Wow.
I think it was like the 6th month when he tapped me out for the first time. So, he was I mean, his wrestling pedigree was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're those of you guys who are listening, if you're not aware, Chris placed, I think, 2nd in the NCAAs his senior year. And he's just a phenom. But then, what was always I found so fascinating about Chris is like you listen to guys like Matt and Ray Longo talk about him, and they're like, this guy's on another level. So when I hear guys like Matt who, rolling with Matt Serra for, even when I got my black belt and even like as a high level brown belt, I always felt like a white belt with Matt. Matt was just next level. And that's why it's like I always try to stay super humble. People, when you move schools and you don't have like the Serra Academy is just, I mean,
they're
without a doubt one of the best schools in the country. They just have so much talent.
It's connected to Henzo's group. I mean, he's under Henzo.
Matt has done a phenomenal job. And now it's like you have the new generations of heroes. I think, for example, so the new crop of guys, now you have like Jason Rao. I think I gave Jay Rao his intro, but if I didn't give him his actual intro, I was certainly like teaching classes when he was a white belt. Jason is now like one of the up and coming down here desk web guys. Jason has just ascended to a level that is, I think I rolled with him like 2 or 3 years ago. I went up to Long Island, maybe even longer than that. I don't know. But he crushed me. I mean, just destroyed. And it was just, I was so proud, so humbled and so proud. But I mean, that's just it. Like when you have a school, I came up, when I started, I think the highest guys, aside from like Matt, Nick, and Joey, and Tom Muller, were like purple belts, and it was kind of really like, when I came to Advance, it was kind of the same thing, and now Advance is kind of getting to the level where it was when I left. We have all these black belts, but now fast forward like 7 years, you got new guys who are starting, and you'll have classes where like there'll be like 10 black belts rolling at once. That was unheard of, 11 years ago, or whenever I started, about I guess 14 years ago. So it's just like the new school of guys, they're just reinventing the game, and I think that's one thing you lose. When you're not taking it as seriously, you're just not up on the trends. But I think as a black belt, especially someone who's not like a world-class competitor, that's what you have to learn to just accept, but learn from. Like I love it when we have blue belts who are gonna, show me the honey hole and heel hook me and tap me out. It's like, because I'm not ashamed to tap. I have no, I think it's great if lower belts tap me, because that means the instructors are doing a great job, and I teach the classes. So I'm very proud of that. And B, it's how I learn. I'm not on YouTube, but I know what it's like to have that fire. I was there at one point. Now for me, it's just a lifestyle. It's just something I really enjoy, and it's. The level of mastery makes it almost like effortless in a sense. Like you're just there, you're present. It's a meditative state, and I really like that about jiu-jitsu. It's just an athletic meditation. Yeah,
it's I think at some point, I mean, I still hope to compete for a little bit. But I know that mindset though, where at some point it will be more of a longevity battle with longevity, right? Where you're trying to really stay away from injuries.
Totally.
I mean, that's the biggest killer for anybody. It's just the major demoralizer, But
that's advice I give a lot of the guys in class. I mean, I just say tap early and tap off. And that's something I learned as a black belt. Like when I was not a black belt, I was not doing. I was just like, I just wanted to kill guys. But I think it's that, and then like I think one of the big things that this is just happening recently because we've had a string of injuries at the academy, and I think we have to do a better job. Just thinking out loud because it's a jiu-jitsu podcast, but teaching guys to control their submissions. I think that like what a lot of the injuries are because guys they're so excited to get the tap that they're just being really more aggressive than they need to be to get the tap, and that's how accidents happen. And that's a shame. So like you said, like. As you mature, it's just about not getting injured. So that's why I don't mind tapping out. If blue belt's got me in a weird heel hook position and I'm not like gonna get out, I'm not gonna wait to see if he rips my ankle off. Like I'm not doing that. Same thing if my arm's extended. It's just
just go. Yep. Wow. Yeah. I'll probably be there in a couple of years.
Keep training, man.
But so moving forward. I appreciate, you saying before that jiu-jitsu and the mentality of it, and wrestling, how it's just not giving up, and just going, has pretty much taken over every other area in your life. And you're very successful with your business, and now you're moving on to this nonprofit. Talk a little about your for-profit business,
Sure.
Love to Brew. How you came to this idea and how you implemented that business plan.
Sure. So, Love to Brew started. I had been casually brewing beer as a hobby before I opened the business. And I was working at the time. I was a VP of sales for like a tech company that was selling kitchen hardware, like for computers. And it really was just observation. It was just pay attention. I've been a fan of business, the philosophy, theory, and study of business since high school. Like I've been reading business books since I was a freshman in college. Like I've just really always enjoyed it. And I think it's my perspective, especially now more than ever at the pace things are moving, that observation and paying attention and looking for trends is really one of the key things to being an industry like disruptor, or just just opening a business for yourself. Yeah. And I had noticed just the trend of how popular homebrewing was going to become. I also noticed that at the time when we opened, the websites were like 5 years old.
Wow.
So there wasn't really a good interactive web experience.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a Web 2.0 experience, so to speak, at the time. And not only that, but the biggest competitors were based in California and Minnesota. So you had the West Coast, you had the Central, but you had no big player on the East Coast.
Wow.
So I said, okay, if we're going to do this, we can, I think there's a huge opportunity to set up a internet scale company, because most homebrew shops in the country are like mom and pop operations.
Yeah.
And that's never what our intention was. And we were, I think one thing that I'm very proud about the Love to Brew experience is I've always been very transparent about that. Like, we love home brewing, and we love, the community that we've built. Love to Brew has done tremendous things for the New Jersey home brewing community. And I'm really proud of that. We're helping people do things that they really care about. We're teaching them new skills, and it's fun. It's cool. I like beer. So
My
it's
brother
like,
loves it.
Yeah, it's fun to do. But that's kind of how it started. It really was just, there was an opportunity. And at the time of 26, my wife always refers to it as the return of Saturn, so to speak. But I think there's a time in many people's lives around their kind of mid-20s when they say, okay, like, what am I doing? Like, what is life? Am I going to just do this, work for someone else kind of thing? The sales job I happened to be at the time, I was also very frustrated with. The year before, I'd broken like 3 of the company's records.
Wow.
And the next year, they were just being really aggressive. I remember that I had suggested to them, this is it's about 7 years ago. I was telling them, because we were in the restaurant computer industry, that they must develop a tablet. Tablets were the new thing. Tablets were going to be. And they just told me, like, they laughed in my face. Like, I was like some 25-year-old kid who didn't know anything.
That's so crazy.
And fast forward, it's like you have restaurants without people right now.
Everybody's using the tablets.
It's literally everyone's using it. And they had an opportunity back then to develop a more, like, everyone's using iPads. I was saying, like, develop a more robust tablet for, like, actual restaurant use. And they didn't do it. They thought it was, a silly idea. And so I felt really undervalued. I'm the kind of person, and this is why I think I've always kind of struggled with jobs, in retrospect, with jobs, just period. Like, anything I had to work for someone else, I felt was always very challenging. Both because I like to work at like my own pace kind of thing. I work approximately like 90 to 100 hours a week. That's pretty consistent, and it's not an exaggeration. But I don't do it in the like a 9 to 5. I'll get up at like 7:30, and I'll probably start working around like, my morning routine is fairly, it's disciplined. It's all the same thing. It's like I run or I wrestle, and I have 2 days off. I meditate. I'll walk the dog, and then I'll read, for 30 to 40 minutes in the morning. And then I start working around like 8:39, and then I'll work till like 6, and then I'll walk the dog again, get my wife from the train, pick up, hang out with her for a little bit. Then at 8, I'll probably start again till like, 10:30, 11-ish, and I do that 5 days a week. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, I'll start at like 10 and I'll go till like 6.
Okay.
So I just kind of have a very consistent schedule. I'm like way off topic, aren't I?
No.
We're talking about, so... So I felt underappreciated, and I think that's one of the things I always struggle with within corporate companies is like you're always like limited to the position that you're in, and it's like you know it doesn't matter if you do research, like you're just gonna kind of get like this pat on the back, and I just wanted to go. I just wanted to be like I wanted to have the reins free, so I was like itching for an opportunity to do something on my own, to not be like controlled. Plus, we had seen the recession at that time. I had seen like my mother lose her job after like 30 years or 20 years, I think. So it was like, there's the idea of job security was laughable.
Yeah.
And I still think it's laughable today.
Absolutely.
So I think that it's something that I was like, you know what, I'm not going to be subject to someone else's whims. I'm going to do this. So Love to Brew was just, it was the right place, right time. We got in, if you imagine a bell curve, we got at the knee of the curve, which is like the very beginning before it shoots up. So we rode that wave. We grinded, grinded.
I know you guys
7
did,
days
yeah.
a week.
Yep.
I worked 7 days a week for 3 or 4 years. And for the first 2, I didn't get paid $1. So I worked for free for 7 days a week, just living off my savings until I was like literally absolutely poor, like no money. I had moved with my mother, she was kind enough to support me. My parents were very supportive. I was very lucky, not whereas that. My parents have always been very supportive of everything I've done. And that's one thing I'm very blessed with because, I think that is a tremendous amount for your confidence and your ability to do things. Just having that. And so, although they didn't necessarily agree with it, once I made the decision, they were like, well, whatever, fine. You can live with me, you know what I mean? And that's, and my dad would like help out and like fix stuff around the place. And,
oh, wow.
So we just grinded. Our philosophy was accelerate growth as quickly as possible. It was like, how quickly can we do $1 million? That was the question. How quickly can we get to the $1 million threshold? Because once you get to a 7-figure annual recurring revenue, you're kind of you'll be able to ride the waves. You have a big enough customer base and a big enough diversity and supply. So right now, Love to Brew is one of like the top 10 homebrew shops in the country. There's about 715 total. So we control a significant, not a significant, a larger part of the market share than the average. But we're certainly not the biggest. There's a mega company that owns like 15% of the market. But we have a very strong niche. We have a lot of recurring business. Our service is like second to none. So that's what Love to Brew was. It was an opportunity. It was timing, and it was just making the leap. Just saying like, oh, really? Like Love to Brew was like, I decided I was going to do it, and 7 months later we were open. You know, so it was just like we're going to do it. And I'm a big believer in that. If we're talking business, and especially for-profit business, now in 2018 more than 2011. The pace of change is so rapid with the exponential growth of technology and how that's affecting just innovations that traditional business models and traditional business plans, they're not that relevant anymore. It's more about like if you want to do something, you do it and you go for it. It's the same thing we did with our society. Yeah, our society is not a functioning product. We call it an MVP. It's a minimum viable product. It does exactly the basic things it needs to do. Just to get people like, hey, look, this exists, and like we're kind of testing this out, and building what we call proof of concept. To say, look, we did this. We got a couple thousand people in New Jersey in these two districts, and the feedback was positive. Yeah. And using that to generate the funding we need, to really build a true national, free and open campaign platform.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk more about that.
Yeah, and I'm going to. But that was basically Love to Brew. That's how we got into it. That's what we did. Constant learning, constant working. Just, but always thinking about how we can improve. Just being, anal about efficiencies. Just like, how can we make this better? And just is really doing it. And a lot of failures. A lot of scary times. A lot of times we're like, I don't know if I'm going to go bankrupt tomorrow. A lot of times we're like, I don't know if I could pay checks. A lot of times where I'd have to throw money back into the business. Yeah. But around year 6, it started to get good. And now in year 7, it's pretty great. Now I work about 5 to 10 hours a week maximum at Love to Brew. I show up to the office like 1 day a week just to hang out with the guys and do some work there. But yeah, that really is it's funny. But if you do the right things for 6 years, it's like all that cumulative growth. When it clicks, it's like, oh wow, the machine is here, and it gives you a lot of time to innovate, and not be so grindy. And most importantly, I'll kind of summarize with this, I'm lucky that we have such a great team. Yeah. That I couldn't do without the guys. We have guys who are, who are serious about the business, they're vested in it, and we're vested in them. I think for the positions that our guys are in, they get paid well above market rate, but they deserve it. You know what I mean? Because I trust them immensely, and I trust them to do the right thing. And just like any other partnership, sometimes you have to have tough conversations. Trust doesn't negate that, but I've been very fortunate in that aspect.
That's awesome. I think what's incredible is I got to see you from start to now. And I mean, let me tell you, like, guys, like Ron busted his butt. It was just incredible to see his dedication to his business. But actually, it's funny too, because I think at that time I also started that little T-shirt.
I bought some T-shirts from you.
You bought some T-shirts. Yeah, I think that was like one of our first initial interactions. That was like 7 years ago. But that it was just incredible to see how much you were expanding, and you were doing in the rate you were doing it is quite quick. You kept implementing new plans, and I was just like, man, this guy doesn't stop. How many people would have given up within that 6 years? You know what I mean? Like there's something that differentiates you and person B who tried their business and failed.
Sure.
I think some people call it grit. What would you say, I guess, was that fire? Do you think it all goes back to jiu-jitsu and wrestling? What made you keep fighting, like never giving up? Was it this dream that you just couldn't let go?
That's a great question. I think it's a culmination of a lot of different lessons and learned, right? So you talk about jiu-jitsu and wrestling. Jiu-jitsu and wrestling was, that you're going to stick with it. You're just going to do it. This is going to suck, and you're going to do it. Again, I was bad at wrestling, and I didn't know how to control my weight. So wrestling was a pretty miserable experience for me. Like, it wasn't fun. Jiu-jitsu was fun. Jiu-jitsu taught me mastery. Like, you can do this, and you can enjoy it. But I think speaking from the position at this moment, I think what I think have a better understanding than a lot of people I meet is the value of time and the concept of time. Time is, we think of like past, present, and future, but that's a narrative we feed ourselves to kind of measure things. Time is now, period. It only exists now, and every moment is a now, and there's nothing else but now. So the question you have to ask yourself is, am I doing, in this very moment, am I doing something to move me closer to my vision? Am I doing something to move me closer to the desires and the things I want and need? And I think that's like, that's how, like how I work from home and how do I manage 10 hours a day at home is because when I want to screw around, when I want to go on Reddit, when I want to like play a video game, I'm just like, all right, well, why don't you look at your list first? Because there's 20 things on your list that need to be chopped off. And then I'm a big planner. Like that's I think is a key to success. And I could talk in a lot of detail about how I structure my days. But I think that's the one thing that I really, I just try and be as present as possible because that is the reality we exist in. Everything else is false. Like there's no, your past and future. Your past is a memory. Is and your future is a variable. But it's kind of like, one thing I've always found fascinating is I'm a really big reader, right? I love like neuroscience. I love technology. I love social sciences and politics. But one of the things, in relation to time and just being present is quantum physics has the dual slit experiment. And essentially what the dual slit experiment says is that if you measure, the results vary. So like they shoot photons through these dual slits, and the photons, if they're not measured, they come out as a wave. So it changes its state of matter. This is a natural phenomenon. Quantum physics has like, I think it's a 0.99 to the 20th degree like accuracy. So it's just as accurate as like actual physics. And it clearly shows that if we don't measure it, the matter changes form. And when we measure it, it goes back to what we'd expect it to do.
Wow.
So what I've taken from that from a philosophical perspective is that it's a natural law to some extent that the observer dictates the experiment. So if you're present and you're conscious in your action, you can bend the universe to your will to some extent. And that's how I kind of approach life, business, and relationships.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think I took that from. We've had conversations like this before. You know, certain things are inevitable, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you can't control the weather. You can't control.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, traffic.
Yeah.
Certain things you can't control, right? But there's certain things that you can control, which is yourself, right?
Yeah.
And what you're capable of, and how far you're willing to go, right? And I think, you know, a lot of people in your shoes that were at that 6 year, you know, prior to that, would have eventually pressed the stop button, right? They would have been like, this is not going anywhere and I need to stop. But you kept going. You know, and it's just interesting just to think how about how your mind works and what was the reason why you kept going versus, you know, somebody else who doesn't. I think one of the things I hope to achieve in this podcast is that all the people that I do interview, they're all pretty successful people and they're right, and have faced, you know, places in their life where they could have just stopped and given up, but they kept going, and now they're at their position that they're in now. You know, so I think as I'm chipping away, this is that one detail I'm trying to figure out, you know, and hopefully encourage, you know, the people that watch this show, and help their lives, you know, that they don't give up. You mentioned, you know, you read a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, you recommended 3 books to me, which I thought were fantastic. My favorite one being From Good to Great, which they're all bookshelf right there. So they were Scaling Up, From Good to Great, and then 0 to 1.
Yeah.
Which I'll be posting under the description. I'll put a tag for you guys that are interested. Whenever I bring up any type of thing that helped me in my life, I will link it in my description. You guys can check it out, buy it through that link so I can get paid a little bit because I'm doing this for free. So yeah, if I can make a little bit of money out of this, then that would help me out a lot. I send your Bitcoins and your Litecoin to me as well if you are so willing to donate. But yeah, you mentioned Scaling Up, which for me, that was the most practical book.
Yeah.
It was like a workbook.
Yes.
You know, it was like pretty much, this is how you do it.
Yes.
Right? For me, like, I've always struggled with those type of books because I'm like, I don't like to fall. I just don't like to be told what to do.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what it is. That's with everything in life. The other one was From 0 to 1, which I really thought was interesting because it was very conceptual.
Yeah.
It was a very conceptual book about, businesses that start from nothing, and it will be the first business of its kind.
Yes.
Pretty much. That's the whole idea. Like Uber, there was never been an Uber in the past, and Uber, started. That would be an idea of a 0 to 1. I don't know if I'll ever come up with an idea for a 0 to 1. We see these so few and far between in our lives, especially now that technology is growing so quickly and Silicon Valley's constantly pushing new ideas out. It's and then whatever new deal comes out, like it can be bought quickly by these major gigantic companies. So this whole theory of 0 to 1, for me as a person, I'm like, man, that's a hard thing to achieve. Not to say that it's impossible for anybody, but that when you do achieve something like that, you have to really understand that you're in that like 1% of the 1%. Like this is not something that happens every single day. So that was a great book. It was more of an inspirational thing. But then From Good to Great was my favorite. That was I highly recommend that book. That was my favorite out of the 3. I think what it touched on that hit me the most was the idea of a level 5 leader, which is, I consider you, a level 5 leader. A lot of the guys.
I don't know if everyone else does.
Yeah, ask your employees. He's like, maybe level 2.
Maybe.
But no, level 5 leader is the highest type of leader. It's basically the leader that leads by example and brings his troops up, right? To get them to a higher level. It's not somebody that just, this is what you're doing, that's it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't care, and yelling. But a level 5, there's so few people where I've come across where I'm like, after reading that book, I'm like, wow, he's a level 5 leader. Like, he really leads by example, and he really brings people up, I never had that concept until, reading it in the book. And then, you start noticing traits about, people. My boss, I consider her a level 5 leader. She's one of the most amazing people I've ever met.
Yeah.
And the way she leads is not like, other people. It's very different. But yeah, I don't know if you have any other recommendations.
I got a ton of books, man.
Oh,
we can make this about books.
Yeah.
Jim Collins, good to great. I mean, I really liked the level 5 leader thing is, I think, really critical. Right? I think that's a really good point to touch on, because if you're ever going to lead people, it's so easy to forget that you're dealing with people, right? People who have the same concerns, the same fears, the same hopes that you do, and we put this like artificial barrier through these roles, but the work doesn't have to be like that. Like that traditional, it stemmed really from like the war economy and the industrial revolution of just you had a high demand with an extremely lowly educated workforce. So the idea was like, all right, make them smart enough to pull the lever and just treat them like animals because you got to keep them in line, kind of thing. And not everyone has kind of moved past that to some extent, which is it doesn't translate to 2018. Well, my favorite part from the Jim Collins book was actually getting the right people on the bus. Like just how that is the critical.
Yes.
Like if you don't have the right, that's the first thing you must do. And if you don't have that, nothing else matters.
That's true. Yeah.
Peter Thiel's book. Peter Thiel's an interesting character. I think he and I differ greatly on our views of society and the future. Peter is, he's a very much. I don't know what the official label for it is, but essentially he believes in the fact that it's like survival of the fittest to the core. Like if you're poor, tough shit, like I'm rich because I deserve to be here, and I'm going to go move to New Zealand when climate change happens, and you're all going to starve to death. And that's kind of like his vibe, and I don't really appreciate that, but he is a genius. And his vision is 0-1. I think it's, I wouldn't mystify it. You talked about earlier how you think like, to do something like that is oh wow, it's not. It's not as hard as you think if you're paying attention. But then the flip side is it also depends how you measure success.
Yeah.
Is success being a billionaire? Because then yes, statistically your likelihood of doing that is minimal, right? But is if your vision is to create change, well, that can be measured in a lot of different ways, right?
That's very interesting.
That's another part of running a business is like how do you define it? So Love to Brew, the vision was like let's build something that I can like live off of and not have to work that much, right? That was like my vision. Like let's build a machine that I can own that is functioning, that is something I enjoy, that has a good team. But I don't want to work at 6 days. Like my intention was never to run a homebrew shop for the rest of my life, right? So that to me, Love was a success. It's definitely not a 0-1 because we weren't an innovator. But I think in any when you talk about those kind of ideas, it's just like anytime you find yourself being frustrated, it should be like, okay, what would it take to fix this? Does it exist? Oh, it doesn't exist. Oh wow, I have a 0-1 idea, right? But then I firmly believe this. A lot of success in business is timing. Yeah. And sometimes you're just not on the right timing. I can give an example. I don't want to jump too ahead, but there's last night I had an interview with an accelerator for our society. Accelerators they invest in you. Like this specific one would be for $25,000, and then you fly to California and you like train with these people. Yeah. And they're specifically focused on civic tech. So it'd be a tremendous opportunity. We made it past the first round of the screening. We got invited to like a phone interview. I'm always super self-conscious about these things because like I can't help just be me, I'm like, of course. I'm just like, let's like think out loud. It's supposed to be an interview, and I'm like, no, wait a minute. And so I don't know how they're gonna feel about me. So we'll see. Yeah. But they had another civic tech nonprofit, similar to our society, but he was trying to do direct democracy decentralized via like a blockchain. Oh wow. So. I'm not convinced that blockchain has any is going to be proven to be practical in that sense, aside from like a commodity sense. I also don't know enough about it, but I think the problem with that idea is that I think it's a brilliant idea. And essentially it was like direct democracy, so everyone votes on everything, and if you don't want to vote, you can assign your vote to someone else. Like I could give you my vote if we were going to vote on like whatever, something that you were familiar with and I wasn't. I could be like, oh Simon, you can vote for me on this. But I think the time is not right for that.
Yes.
Because, for example, in New Jersey, we had 32% of the people vote in our last election for the governor. So 68 abstained. So I don't think you're going to make the leap from 68% of the people not even bothering to vote to caring enough to vote on issues directly, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know that that's the big gap. Love the Bruce timing was we were on the beginning of a bell curve. I saw that happening and we jumped in, right? Yeah. So I think there's a lot of luck involved. No matter what anyone says, I don't credit my success to mastery of being a great businessman. I don't believe that for a second. I think good timing and hard work and just to your point when you talk about throwing in the towel. I just never consider failure an option. It's just not an option. Because there's no way I can fail because. Even if the project fails, you've learned so much. So the worst case scenario, you're a better person. Exactly. You've expanded your sphere of both influence and knowledge. So how you measure success, I think, is going to be correlated to how you feel about yourself and life and those kind of things. Yeah. So the advice would be failure not being an option, right? Yeah. And you mentioned a lot about pre-planning, right? Making sure you're educated in the field and being able to see these trends and things like that. Yeah. So there is some work, knowledge involved. Involved. So to say it's just all luck or not. Some people would say, I was just super lucky. I think there's a level of humbleness in that, but at the same time, it's no, Ron, you did quite an incredible thing. I appreciate that. So, but, a lot of luck.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But yeah, so, for the listeners listening in, there's a lot to get out of that, and I think you could even dive deeper, and depending on the feedback I get, if you ever want to do this again.
Yeah, people want to people want to listen to me. I love talking, so that's not a
deep dive into the whole CEO type of lifestyle and the path to getting there. But I want to get into your nonprofit now, sure. Our Society. This is when you pitched the idea to me, I was blown away by it because that is the future. The way you were thinking about it. I've hated politics since I was a kid. Just seeing the tribalism. You have your one side and your other side, and it's a constant battle. Yeah. And there's and the way they battle is not very helpful. It doesn't help society. Yeah. The way that the battle goes is usually, a lot of what you see in social media is childish, right? You have grown folks, saying some ridiculous type of things, And usually the people that are getting things done are the ones with the deepest pockets, right? Sure. So a lot of stuff is happening in the background that we don't have access to because you and me are just, we don't belong. We're not in that 1% of the 1%, right? Yeah. So
the proletariat.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a word for that. I didn't know. I'm an engineer, not a English major. So, for me. Politics was always something I just couldn't stand. People telling me this is what you need to vote for, and when you ask why, it's usually backed with an emotional reasoning. Yeah. Never really with most of it I from what I've seen has been very emotional. Yeah. And what you pitched to me was the first time where I looked at it as a technology. Yeah. Where I was like, wow, something like this would help our society, right? Yeah. Talk about our society. What is it?
Sure.
I'll promote it.
I'll preface our society before we talk about what is it, because you and I have obviously talked a lot about it. But I think one of the important fundamentals for anyone listening to understand about what we're doing is the view of all of our social systems, any system we have, whether that's the current capitalist market economy, whether that's our relationship between property and contract, whether that's our elections, whether that's our democratic republic. These are all technologies. They're no different than your cell phone. They've been invented by people to serve a purpose. The challenge is right now is why are we having such like tumultuous times? Why do we keep having consistent recessions? Which, by the way, another recession's on the way. Solar's already surpassed coal. Once it surpasses oil and it gets even cheaper, you're gonna have over $1 trillion worth of assets that are gonna be just bailed upon. So you're gonna have another major recession. Why do we have that? Why do we have such divisive politics? We know that that's because there's big money donors in there, and there's a lot of corruptness. And thank God we live in an area, we live at a time of mass communication and information where we know about this, because this stuff isn't new, right? This has gone on for centuries, but now we know about it, right?
Yeah.
So when our society came about, because with Love to Brew being where it is and giving me the freedom I have, I wanted to do a social good project. And I had been into political philosophy for the last couple of years. Roberto Unger is like my biggest influence. All his lectures are online.
Where's the professor from?
Harvard.
Okay.
Yeah. And Cornell West. Cornell West bounces around. I really like his stuff. And then Ray Kurzweil, he's not politics, but he's tech. Jeremy Rifkin, these are all like influences who are kind of bringing this package together. But again, being observant, right? With the election of Trump, the temperature of politics just has gone to a new level. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but it's gone to a level, and it's been an awakening for a lot of us that, if we just kind of sit back and allow, if we just, turn a blind eye, which, by the way, is part of a systemic design, right? If you're too concerned about like feeding your family, well, the wealthy get to have their playground with politics, and you're going to keep you're not going to care until it's too late, so to speak. The division you mentioned is manufactured division, right? Yes. It divides the population. Yep. So initially I was initially thinking of running for office. That's initially what happened. But as you and I have discussed at some length, I'm a progressive, and I don't when I say progressive, for those of you guys listening at home, I don't mean liberal, I don't mean left, I mean a true progressive. I believe in institutional reformation. I don't believe that society is equipped through our government and current institutions to handle the rapid accelerating growth of technology and the interconnectivity and shrinking of the world. And I think this is the major cause of a lot of our problems. And I think that this is something that, our society was a way to kind of bridge this gap. So our society is essentially a free and open election campaign platform that serves two purposes as a product. It removes the financial barriers of entry to running for office. So at the congressional level, we have congressional candidates now on the platform. We launched a week and a half ago. It is a tremendous tool, but congressional elections still have a ton of money involved. But let's talk about like local elections, like running for town council. I've done a tremendous amount of community outreach over the last year, and I've had countless stories where I wanted to run for town council, but the Democratic machine or the Republican machine told me I needed 40 grand. 75 grand was the most I heard to run for town council.
Wow.
That's like sitting, that's a volunteer position. And so most people don't have access to that. So what do they have to do? They have to fundraise, right? So that means they have to take donations from for-profit interests or special interest groups, which we all know leaves you beholden. No matter what the politicians say, no matter what they do, there are some great politicians I really like today from the state of New Jersey who are absolutely in the pockets of major conglomerates. And you can see it in their voting records.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like we don't have, here in the U.S., we do not have the legislative, or I should say, we don't have the political willpower to change it. In other countries, in Europe, Australia, there are tons of liberal democracies that have campaign finance limits, that have term limits, and their what would be the equivalent of their Congress, that have voting, mandatory voting. They have so many things to increase the temperature of democracy. Here in the U.S., we don't, by intention. So my vision is that if we're going to, every year, every election, you always hear, why don't the young people vote? Right? That's the big question you get a lot. And they always say, it's apathy, or they don't care. I argue that that's completely false. It's not apathy, it's agency. Agency is a sense of control. So when you deny young people information, when you deny them, easy to access information in a single place, in a format that they are used to, that is the critical thing, right? you're trying to get them to go vote and trying to teach them in ways that we've been doing for 100 years. But the generation who's 18 now has grown up with high-speed internet in their pocket since they were 5. You know, like they've had access to all the world's information for their entire existence. And that's why our generation as millennials, I think the Gen Zs are going to be the catalyst generation, but it's up to our generation to lay the groundwork for them, because we had 11 years. I had the internet. I think dial-up internet came around when I was like 10. Yeah. Right? That's what I had. My parents were early adopters. And really, it didn't really become super useful until like college. You know, like that's when it was like high-speed internet came about, and like you could really communicate instantly and often.
When did Facebook come out?
Facebook was in my college. I was a sophomore or junior. I think I was a sophomore, so that would have been 2000. 2000 or 2001 it came out. I don't know which one. But around there, it came out, and it was obviously totally different than it was now. It was essentially like a way to check out what the girls down the hall were doing, and so what our society does is, aside from moving money, the money aspect, and empowering more people to run, because that is critical, right? If we're going to change democracy, we're going to change society, we need to get rid of the old white male political class. Like, we need more diversity, and we need more empowerment for these people, and a way for people who are involved in their communities to take that next step and have a high amount of access to the community without having to pay, or accept donations. Because 50% of a candidate's time is spent fundraising. That's a statistical fact. 93% of the time, the candidates in elections, the candidate who wins 93% of the time has the most money. So
you can see this information.
It's all, this is all like common, it's available knowledge. So when we talked about designing our society and participating in the youth, we said, how can we make this process as easy and convenient as possible? And that's the big Our Society value add. There's plenty of great tools out there that give you a ton of political information, but that only helps the engaged. That is a small pie. That's a red ocean. We're going after the blue ocean, the unengaged. And the objective is, how can I just make it easy? So what we've done is make it uniform. You can find out all your candidates in one spot. You don't have to go to 10 different websites, by the way, which all have crazy varying information. Like, there's no consistency. B, if you hate politics, you can use our social value matching algorithm. It's like a dating website. You answer questions, the politicians answer questions, we match over 27 different categories.
I used it, actually. I set up a profile. It's at oursociety.org.
Correct. Yeah.
I set up a profile and I answered all the questions. It was actually pretty simple to do. I thought it was awesome. I was kind of like, man, I can't wait to see where when it starts to actually launch and everything.
Go past our MVP. I agree. It's very exciting, and for me personally, it's something that's like, one thing for the fellow millennial entrepreneurs out there. It's like, consider what you want to do with your life, because I'll tell you, the for-profit industry, it's not as motivating as you'd imagine it to be. Like, money only goes so far. And let me be clear, I'm not wealthy. Like, this Love to Brew has not made me a millionaire. It's allowed me a lot of freedom. That's what it's allowed me. I want to be clear. And I always say that. It's not a ton of wealth, a lot of freedom, because my time is the most valuable thing. But, consider using your skills for social good. I think that's like really what we should be doing. I think we're in like this late stage capitalism that's just fueling pollution. It's just fueling, poverty. It's just fueling inequity. It's fueling like, it's an exclusive system. And it's like, going back to my original statement, when I wanted to run for office, I knew my vision was it was too early to be realized and too early to be voted. So I'm trying to create institutional reformation through technology. So changing our elections through a product rather than a political campaign, if that makes sense. Because it is, I get up every day excited, man. It's like we're doing something real, something tangible, and something that's like, we're getting a lot of positive, affirmation about what we're doing, and it is exciting. And we allow them to match, and that's kind of our MVP. And we have a whole product roadmap which is available online. Like, we're showing people what we're doing. We're just trying to get as many perspectives as possible. If you're listening to this, and you should join the platform, because even if you don't want to use it, the more accounts I have on, the better it looks when I go to get grants. Right? Like, So
I'll post the link in the description.
Thank you. So that in a nutshell well is the Our Society experiment. And we do a lot of like social outreach. We do a lot of YouTube videos, which no one watches, but it's still cool. I mean, hopefully someone, when we get to a point where people will watch them, we have a lot of content because we go out, we do a lot of grassroots efforts, and just say, look, like we're doing this. We're a group of volunteers. No one is getting paid. I bankrolled the whole thing. And we're pretty much out of money at this point, and we have everyone who's working is a volunteer, and we're just lucky. We know we're onto something good. Yeah. It's just like, how do we get it there? That's the key. That's the fun part I like. But it's like, how do we get it there? How do we maneuver to be there? And our site could totally fail. By the way, it could not be the platform. But if nothing else, I've built a nice network. I've learned a tremendous amount about the process.
Absolutely.
And we've opened a lot of people's eyes about like what technology can do when it's put for like a social good. And we are a nonpartisan nonprofit, so we have a path to revenue, but it's not about exiting. It's not about selling. We don't sell any of the data. That's key, right? Like we give away so much of our data for everything we do without a second thought. Why don't we use it for our own public good? Because the big picture is we can use that data to identify collaborative trends.
Yes.
Right? Like you live in Jersey, we have 1 million people on the platform. Okay, wow, well 93% of you agree on X, right? And make that data public. So any candidate running must run on that, right? They must include that platform. And they can't just push it under the rug. We want to hold politicians accountable through data.
Yes.
Right? A data-driven democracy, not just this rhetoric BS that we're used to.
The truth.
Right? And that's what we have to fight for, because there's a whole generation of people who don't want to let go of that. Right? It's Frederick Douglass. Yeah. Power concedes nothing. We must take it, and it's got to be taken through tech, because that's our biggest advantage.
Yeah, and that's the whole direction. Everything, we're all going to this new wave where everything's turning into an app.
Yeah.
Where I think the original idea you had was this was it was almost like a dating app. You select the algorithm basically pulls all the information of what you align with, and then it matches you to the candidate that connects with what you believe in. I mean, to me, I'm like, that's kind of like a 0 to 1 there.
Well,
right?
We'll see.
I mean, for me, it's ingenious because that would be the way that I would want to, get into politics. For me, it's always been about the truth. And whenever I would dive into these political, conversations or whatever, again, a lot of it is emotionally driven. There's not much, if they're throwing facts, it's usually to put somebody else down, right? And it's not really like, hey, let's look at this objectively, right? So having something like this where the truth, the only available information available is the truth, and what these candidates vote for versus what they say, things like that. I believe this is what our generation wants. We have access to everything online now. We can find out if somebody lied in an instant. So why even bother lying? Let's just get all the information out there on a piece of paper or an app, and make it streamlined.
I think we can kind of go a little off track, but I think that question, why bother lying? I think it's an important question to kind of discuss when you reflect on like society as a whole. The Trump phenomenon, and not to make this I'm not saying one thing or another, but if you consider his core base, right, that 30% that has not fluctuated, like it has never fluctuated, they are statistically the least educated and the most impoverished overall. So why lie? It's because they have a constant stream of information that is false. So look, at the end of the day, all humans follow the same rule. We're all the sum of our experiences, right? That's what makes us who we are to some extent. There's the nature versus nurture, but the idea is that, to a lot of extent, it is nurture. It is what you experience, is how you experience the world. And it's like this, it layers and layers and layers. So when you're from a very rural area and you have one news source and your local media is owned by Sinclair, which is like a hyper right wing. So not only is your Fox News right wing, but now your local township media is super right wing. So if you're only receiving one information source that is not only feeding you false information, but also feeding you information about how, negative information about the quote unquote others, right? Yeah. You make the subject an object. It's like War 101. You dehumanize the opponent. you have a really challenging task ahead of you. So why they lie, it's because it works. It divides the population. But when you talk about how do we solve this problem, because this is the big thing, like, well, what do we do? This is a part of our country now, and it's an ugly part, but it's here. The answer is systemic reformation. You decouple education from municipalities. All education right now in the U.S. is through local municipalities. So that's how you fund the schools, right? So it makes sense that New Jersey has some of the best schools in the country, if not the world, compared to Kentucky.
Yeah.
Right? We have 8 million people in this, how big is our state? It's like a 3-hour drive from top to bottom, right? So you decouple education, you make it a federal program, mandated, federally funded, and then the state and federal government cooperate with the communities, and they have this mandated program. But like the idea that, and no offense to anyone who is religious, but I don't believe that creationism should be taught in public schools. Like the Constitution clearly talks about the separation of church and state, right? Yeah. It's like your beliefs, you're more than welcome to believe them, and I'm not going to criticize you, I'm not going to judge you, I think that's great. But public school should not be a place for any sort of religious education. That is a belief not founded in science and data, it's in faith and spirituality, which is a huge part of the human existence. But that's not what school's for. That's religious school, sure, right, if you want to do that. But the fact that we have public schools that are teaching creationism and evolution side by side, that's just not factually accurate. It's just not, and that doesn't help us. And that's because we allow municipalities to control education. So we are not only do we have this problem, but the problem is being multiplied generation by generation, and it compounds, right? So I deeply, deeply sympathize and empathize with that section of our population, because I'm gonna be candid, I get nasty with other progressives and other liberal thinkers, is that we should not demonize these people. These people did what they thought was in their best interest. That's exactly what they should have done. It's our collective fault that we've allowed them to have the bubble of thought that they've been given through for-profit interests controlling their information. So that's how, it's just, off topic, but this is what I'm talking about. Like, we need institutional reformation. Like, we need to change the entire paradigm of how we do things, which is a big criticism I have of the modern progressive movement, but that's, for another conversation.
Well, hopefully our society is a step towards that direction, right? Changing our current platform. I'm all for it. I love the idea. They say you vote with your feet and your money, right? And it's something that I've supported and hope to continue to support. Over, hopefully we can look back at this episode and be like, man,
remember when?
Ron made it. I'm all supportive, man. I think your idea is amazing. I think if anybody that should be doing it should be you. The way you present the information and have such a deep understanding of it, but at the same time you look at it in all perspectives. You don't come out of it as an emotional response. It's very factual. Every time we've had conversations in the gym or whatever, it's like politics time. It's like you have your lefts and your rights, and we're all just talking, but we're actually having a conversation. Right. There's never been a time where at the gym where it gets crazy and everybody's like, "Shut up, you're wrong."
No, totally.
Which is what I don't experience. And when I am around people that are talking about politics, it's usually a lot of tension and heat. So I appreciate that about our gym. It's very and you're always the one that's leading the conversation. So it's just like this, if anybody to do it, it's Ron, man. So all the best of luck to you and our society. Hopefully we can do another episode, in the future and follow up, with that, platform and see where it goes. Or maybe you'll be our next New Jersey mayor. Who knows? Right. Governor Ron Rivers. So, I think we're getting close to the end. I just wanted to close out with some interesting thoughts and things like that. First is, you, to me, are an extraordinary human being, right? You founded and are the CEO of Love to Brew, founded and the CEO of our society, and then you've done competed, trained BJJ with some of the top guys in the world. I believe you told me you were Matt Serra's training partner for some of his fights.
One of them.
Yeah. Okay. You helped me with my cage work, which I did pretty good in my fight, defending on the cage. You coached me, and you're, out of all these things, you're also married, so you're juggling a lot of, responsibilities, and I think something that I also want to get into my this podcast, is performance at the highest level. How do you do it? How do you juggle all these responsibilities? Like, is there something that gives you this edge? Some people rely on the coffee. You mentioned meditation. Sometimes I take nootropics, vitamins.
What's nootropic?
Nootropic is a vitamin for your brain. It helps you kind of like it's like
microdosing?
over the counter. No.
Oh.
No, not microdosing. That would be like the hardcore nootropics, right? I've never delved into that, but it's the over the counter type of stuff. Like let's just say like Huperzine A, which is known, like they've done a test in China where they had 2 classrooms. One classroom took Huperzine A and classroom B did not. Classroom A scored roughly 30% higher than classroom B.
Wow. I never heard this.
It helps you with your memory. I think it also helps with, I might be wrong here, but I think it helps with the Alzheimer's. I think Alzheimer's patients take it.
Have you noticed?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Really?
If on a rough day where I know I have a ton of work, I'll take 1 or 2. Joe Rogan sells stuff from Onnit called Alpha Brain. That's a pretty well-known one. But some of that stuff gives you some crazy dreams. But like when I have a really rough day where I know I have to produce a lot of energy in my brain, I'll take like a Huperzine A or something like that, and for the most part, it helps me concentrate.
Is it cumulative? Like, do you feel like after the fact, or is it just like a temporary stimulant?
I would say it's temporary. Yeah, it's like taking like an ibuprofen type of deal.
Does it have any negative side effects?
That's the one thing. There's not enough long-term research, so I only take it when
needed.
I
understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So some people do. They'll find out whether they have brain cancer or not in the next 30 years. For me, I don't want to take that risk. So coffee does the trick for me. From time to time. But for you, there's people that do biohacking. They use stimulants. They do all these type of crazy things. What are some of the things that you would say gives you an edge when it comes to performing?
Well, I would certainly recommend meditation to everyone I meet. Meditation is really just the art of being present, I do it in the morning, so I like that because it's like I've just done exercise. It's always after either training or running. And it's just like, okay, I've had my workout, so it's done. And then meditation is just a really nice 20 minutes just to like really just be present and not be thinking. And of course you're thinking, but it's really good. But to answer your question, I think it's just discipline. I think, it's a big thing that people, I think I see a lot, especially with younger people, is like, they want motivation. I think motivation is a trap. Motivation is fleeting. Agreed. It's just routine. I just have my days are routine from 6:30 a.m. till 11:30 p.m. It's all this. It's never the same, but the structure is the same every day.
Yep.
And it takes the thought out of it. And I think that's so key. Is like, it's so. Maybe not for everyone, but for me, I have a very challenging time getting things done if I'm not just like able to. It's why I spend so much time planning. Usually like Sundays or Monday morning. Sunday. I plan my week agenda.
Wow, we're very similar.
Yeah, and it's just like that way. It's like when something is done, I just look at the next thing to do, and I rank them by priority. And
I do the same exact thing. Yep.
So and that takes a lot of thought out of me because I find I have a very intense focus. I can sit and do something when I know what that thing is. I struggle with like if I have nothing to do, it's almost like. Or not that I have nothing to do, but if I don't have it like structured well, I find myself flustered and getting frustrated. And even, of course, even with, a disciplined schedule, which I think is really key, you have bad days, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I like the discipline about, is that you kind of just work through it. It's just like, I just got to do this anyway, you know? And then also, you know, but it's important. You mentioned I'm married. Like, that was, you know, of everything I've done, that's the best decision I've made. And that, you know, scheduling time and the, you know, relationships take work. So there's time for that. Like, we have Wednesdays at like usually 8:30, 9-ish. Cell phones go away, you know, that's our night. And then Friday and Saturday nights, and usually Sunday nights. So we have like 4 nights a week. But Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, it's like we see each other in the morning, and, you know, we see each other, but we don't really, you know, we each do our thing, which is cool.
Yeah.
And that's important because my wife's, you know, a really intelligent woman. She's got a lot of, you know, things going on, and she's got a lot of projects. So it's good that we have our space. So I would just say, like, just focus and discipline is the key. Meditation's good. Exercise. I mean, like, at the end of the day, if you don't feel 100% physically, how are you going to feel 100% mentally?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and maybe I feel like I sometimes have a little harsher view of, like, weight management than most people, and maybe because I went through it, and I feel like I understand the pain that you're going through, and it's like I want you to get out of that so bad. You know, and just like anything else, it's just like jujitsu. It's just like starting a business. It's just like, you know, losing weight. It sucks in the beginning. It's always the worst. But if you just stay focused, on your goal, you'll get it. You'll achieve it. Yep. You know, and then it gets super easy after that. Mm-hmm. You know, I hate running, but running's easy. You know, I love training, but training's easy too now. You know, like, it's fun. Meditating was very hard at first. I was so super bad at it. I don't even know I'm super bad at it now, but it's like, at least I've really gotten to a nice groove.
Yeah.
And that's something I can do every day. You know, it's 20 minutes. So that would be it. I think if, you know, and tying it back in is rolling with Simon, right? So jiu-jitsu, if you guys are listening and you guys are jiu-jitsu players, you're thinking about it, if you're thinking about it, do it. And if you're there, it's just like, just show up. That's it. Like, you're not, let me preface. As long as you're not sick and ill and you're getting everyone else ill, or, you know,
ringworm.
Yeah, or you have ringworm, you know, don't show up then. But for the most part, you had a rough day at work, just show up. Just go drill. You're tired, just go drill. If you have a slight injury, you're not, like, you know, if your arm's broken, don't go roll. But if you tweaked your neck, just go drill, don't roll. And be aware of your body, you know, like, the vast majority of you won't be UFC fighters, just statistically. And that's okay, you know, that's not meant for everyone. If you guys have never gotten punched or kicked in the face for it, it sucks, you know, like, that's how I knew I didn't want to be a UFC fighter. One of my first sparring things, I got kicked in the head and I got knocked out. And I was like, yeah, I'm done. That's the end of that. But yeah, I mean, that would be it. Just stay focused, stay disciplined. Find your groove. You know, it's within you to do it. Yeah. Human beings are divine beings to some extent. However you interpret that is one way, but we have the unlimited, infinite potential. We are infinity, and anything is possible, you know, with the right focus and effort. And I do believe that. And of course, there are, without a doubt, systemic barriers. So it's up to us who don't have those barriers to kind of, you know, help to remove them. Absolutely. And empower more people, because once we really get the entirety of humanity really humming, we're going to see acceleration just go through. You know, you think it's good now. Wait until we don't have, you know, 20% of the U.S. population in abject poverty. You know, like, but that can't be done under the current paradigm. So that's the
absolutely.
But
that's awesome. I know you mentioned your wife and, you know, how you manage your time, spend time with her. I know I'm getting married soon.
Married, right? Yeah.
So single ladies back off. Yeah. So, you know, I think it was funny when we were going to the diner, I was going through a really rough time with my confidence.
Yeah. Had you met your wife yet?
No.
Yeah.
I was actually pursuing after. Well, no, even then, I think I wasn't even pursuing anybody, but I had some interests, you know, and I was trying, but I kept getting shut down.
Dude, that's soul crushing. I've been there, man. I've been there. It's. I mean, it hurts, guys and girls can relate to that. It is just getting rejected when you have your hopes up. It's just, especially with a romantic interest.
Yeah,
it's just like,
it's the worst.
You know, I can't curse in your podcast, but it's rough. You know? I get it.
It's tough, man. So I know you've shared with me, you know, some advice, and you know, I think the biggest one was just stop caring about what people think. You know, I think that was the big one that I really needed to sink my teeth on. Yeah. Right? Like, it literally, like, I didn't meet my fiance until I stopped caring about what people think.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what it is, but women can smell desperation. Because when I was like, there's this one girl that I was like, please, and she was just like,
that might not be a strong strategy.
Get away.
I think that the moral of your story, though, and I think this is true for anyone looking for a relationship, you'll never find the right person until you yourself are right.
Yes.
Until you know, if you've come to peace with your existence and you have your clarity, and that takes introspection. You have to dedicate time to think. I spend a lot of time thinking, like
same here.
Just thinking, like, all right, just think about this, think about that. Like, and I don't mean like in a rush. I mean like taking time to sit down and just chill out and just be like, okay, like, where am I? Where am I doing? What are we going? What's going on? I think it's critical because that's where, that's your source of infinity. That's where the ideas are going to come from. You can't just go through the doldrum every day and expect it to change. But
yeah, it's funny because, I went through this phase of just thinking, and, to add to that thinking part was I looked for guys that, in the gym, that I really respected, and, I went, Sung, who's another person I plan on interviewing. He's a oncology doctor, but he also trains jujitsu and, has 2 kids. He's a phenomenal guy. He helped me a lot with my confidence as well, and it was just this state of getting advice from multiple people, and also people, my friends from, my life and, my relationships in the church and things like that. A lot of it was thinking, right? I spent like a good 6 months where I was like, all right, no more trying to run after, some girl or whatever, and just literally working on who I am. And like you said, my existence, right? So just to encourage, the guys out there and the women out there, if you're struggling with your confidence and things like that, maybe it's time to just take a step back and just to look into yourself and really develop who you are, as a person. But yeah, I really appreciate, the time you gave me, telling me get to this point, and even then,
I'm happy it helps, and I'm happy to be a part of your life.
No, I appreciate it.
We have a nice family at the gym, we really do. And it's the same thing at Matt's gym. I mean, it's funny to hear you say that you found influence throughout, the guys at the gym, because I did the same thing, man. I was growing up at, my early to mid 20s, and these were the guys I looked up to, and they were great guys,
Yeah, it's very, I was telling, so now I teach on Thursdays, and I always have this session at the end called Thursday's Thoughts.
Nice.
Where, like, I break, I talk to the people that came into the class, and, when we pay our fees, like, you think about it, it's like a lot of people go into the jiu-jitsu school thinking, like, I'm paying my money to go train, right? But when you really look at it at a deeper level, when you pay your dues, you have this wide network of so many talented people, and that gave me the idea for the show to begin with. It's just like, why are we? You look online and all you see is the best grapplers being interviewed and things like that. But there's so many people in this world that are doing things that I mean, like, it's great that you have somebody that's at the highest level of his game. But he's only doing that. You know what I mean? He's not doing that and has 2 kids and and is saving people's lives. You know what I mean? Like we're running 2 companies and it has a wife and and I know you love dogs as well. And you have a dog. But men that and women that juggle multiple things and can do it so well. That's something that I look at. I'm just like, wow, it's phenomenal. So hopefully, I can get Sung in and, talk about his perspective on helping me with finding a woman. But I just wanted to thank you for, your time. And that.
Probably do less political rant.
Yeah, who knows, man? I don't know. But, I mean.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a good time.
Yeah. So, one more thing just to end out the show. Something quirky. You mentioned Magic the Gathering.
Oh, dude. Magic the Gathering.
and gaming. Right?
I don't want to make. I don't play it often. I don't. I don't play it often because I would only play online now. Like, I don't play with like friends or anything like that.
So when you say gaming, you're talking about
like So I believe, going back to like time management, I do believe in giving yourself personal time. So like on a Saturday, like if my wife's not around, or even if she is around, like I might take 2 hours and just like play some video games, or I might play Magic or something. But I try to avoid Magic because, man, if I play Magic once, it's like I'm playing it for a month. I just can't.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and Magic is the kind of thing, I swear this is true. If I play Magic, it pervades my thoughts. I'll be working and be like, man, I really want to play Magic. I swear to God, it is addicting. And you know what it is? I think it's from like, going back to our very start of the conversation when you're a kid and like how these things influence you. Magic was like my social Magic when I was in my like 10 to tween level. Like Magic was my only source of like recognition and positivity. My family was going through like a weird point in time, and that was like my escape. And I loved Magic. I would play Magic all the time, and I was fairly good at it. And I'm not very good at it anymore, which is frustrating, right?
Yeah.
It's like
it's probably some like crazy level, Korean level, right?
Guys are good. But I try to avoid Magic. I do love the game. It's a great game. But it's like it's not a game I can play and be a good husband, be a good executive director, be a good CEO. I just can't do it because like when I should be working, I'm like, well, what if I sneak a game of Magic? And then it turns into 3 hours. And it's like, well,
that's so funny.
Now it's 3:00 on a Thursday, and I've just wasted half my day.
Yeah.
So I just say no. I'm a cold turkey kind of guy.
Yeah.
If I gotta do something,
Yeah.
I can't wean myself off. I don't have that kind of personality. It's just got to be done. When I chose to be a vegetarian, it was like I'm done. No more meat. It's been 9 months. And that's just how it went. And it's just like, but I couldn't like have meat one day a week. Like, nah, not gonna work. So that's it. That's my quirkiness, I guess. But it's good to have your personal quirks. I think that's what makes you you.
Yeah, mine is back in that time was Counter-Strike and StarCraft.
I was so bad at those games.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Terrible.
Yeah, that was oh my goodness.
I was like, there's so many Zerg. I have one tank.
Yeah, it brings back a lot of memories. But we all have our little interesting quirks, right? So, but thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, man. It was a good time.
It was an awesome time. So hopefully we can do this again, do a follow-up, and get home safe, and we'll see you in the mats.
Cool. See you soon.
All right, man.
Awesome.
All right, all done.